when you're writing a film about suicide and sexual assault, and the hope is that you're making this film so that you can start having talks and kind of break the stigma and really have meaningful conversations with people. But one of the first things that you have to do is look inward. And I remember I was so focused on, how other people have felt about suicide or sexual assault or have gone through it, that I was too scared to say, even in the pitch video itself, other people were braver than me. I did not say that I had my own thoughts of suicide. I talked about the other people that kill themselves in my life. And that's not okay. And I realized that after I had already made this, that, oh my God, the whole reason I titled this is because of shame, and I still have it. So I'm really pushing myself to be more open about it. And that's why I brought it up on this podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everything's Okay, a mental health podcast brought to you by the one and only Crazy Ant Media. In today's episode, we're going to dive deep into a sensitive and critical topic, better known as shame, its correlation with sexual assault, and the profound impact on mental health, including the risk of suicide. Today, our guests are going to be Ashna Sharan, a writer and executive producer of the short film Shame that we will be talking about later on the show, and Deidra Kathleen, an actress and fellow producer on the film. This is going to be a powerful conversation that we're going to explore the intertwining complexities of shame and sexual assault. Welcome, everyone. We're super excited to have you all on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We are so happy to be having this discussion with you guys because these are two topics for anybody who doesn't know. Where the shame and the correlation with sexual assault that could potentially lead to suicide. These are things people don't like to talk about. We don't talk about suicide. We don't talk about rape or sexual assault. And we definitely don't talk about all of the mental health aspects that come along with that, right? Because even if you don't end up going down the road of killing yourself, there are so many different mental health aspects that these survivors deal with on a daily basis that cause them such problems. We also don't like to talk about the fact that we are still in a day and age where the victims are made to be the bad guys, which even more so puts that shame on them and makes them withdraw from society even more. And unfortunately, also in many instances makes them hesitant to report the sexual assault, and it goes unpunished. And so conversations like this are so necessary. So we could not be more happy that you guys are on to talk about it all. So let's just dive right into it. We were doing some research for the show, and the numbers are a little bit startling. When we started doing this, more than a third of women that are rape survivors have contemplated suicide at some point after the assault. 13% of them have actually followed through with it. And according to the National Sexual Violence and Resource Center, survivors of sexual assault 10 times more likely to commit suicide. The numbers get even more terrifying than that. It's even 4 times more than that when they're younger victims. Teenage victims are younger. Those are startling numbers that should be very alarming to a lot of people. Let's just dive right in and talk about that. Why is it, do you think, that society still has this stigma when it comes to rape or sexual assault, that it needs to be swept under the rug, that it's somehow terrible to talk about, and that it must be the victim's fault? How dare did you dress like that? Why did you go out looking like that? You were asking for it. Why are we still in that mentality?
Oh wow, no, that's a tough question. So I think I'll start from, as a woman, I think there's still a lot of sexism in this world in terms of like what a woman's role is in society and what she's how she's perceived. And I think a lot of it also is the context of how women are objectified in society as well, and the sexual aspect of it. And so I think, it's one of those things where people feel like they have to blame, they have to have a reason to justify why this happened, right? Like, oh, how many drinks did you have at that bar? Or
Right.
what were you wearing? How short was your skirt? I think there's this idea that just because you're attracted to a woman, you have this, you own her in some capacity, or you almost have a right to her. And I think women have never really been treated in a way there where they're still seen as like 100% individual with the same property rights, with the same moral rights, with all the same. It really comes down to sexism. I think that's really where it comes down to. And just this idea that women are these dainty things, and that that they're attractive, and they have to, if they wear a short skirt, that's, their legs are something, that's a sign, and it just, all of this has been glamorized, I think, in Hollywood and also just in our media. So that's what I would say. I think it just starts with the fact that women are never really seen, they're seen as items, or things to lust after, versus these are humans, with the same exact
I
intelligence.
wholeheartedly, and I would even take that a step further. I agree with everything that you just said, and I would take it even a step further, that even if the woman is equally attracted to the man and is being flirtatious, that does not mean it's an invitation to do whatever you want. Right? Like, just because a woman is being friendly, just because she may be attracted to you and is flirting with you, does not mean, hey, you can do whatever you want to me. Right? And when it means no, that means no. And you're right. I think women are very much still, we talk about that a lot on this podcast, actually, in past episodes, that women are still objectified. There's this like societal expectation of women that is still put on them. And it's terrifying that we're in 2023 and this is still an issue. This is still going on. I think you're 1000% right.
Most definitely. And Deidra, what's your thoughts on this situation?
I think Ashna made great points. I feel like every gender combined with a different race gets a different result in regards to this. My own experiences, just like in regards of like saying like someone made me uncomfortable or whatnot, is when somebody is seen like a certain way by their friends, their family, it's hard for them to reconsider that maybe that person made someone else uncomfortable, or maybe they have like a dual side to them. I know, like, prior to this meeting, we mentioned the whole Danny Masterson situation. There are people who have like seemed very charming, like to a lot of different people, had like bigger fandoms that have made me uncomfortable, and it has made it easily dismissed in the past. Like, oh, that's just how they are. Oh, they're flirtatious with everybody, or like when somebody is seen a certain way, like they don't want to know. That's where denial comes in. And I think that the stats that we have are even higher in regards to probably contemplating suicide, as well as definitely, I think the assault numbers are higher because like a lot of people don't want to report that. I know so many people who have experienced these type of things, and I really think that those numbers are higher.
Yeah, most definitely. And I want to get personal with both of you guys real quick. My mother has come on the podcast before. We have done a family sessions of sorts to where we talked about everything in her past and her trauma. And she has been a victim of sexual assault and rape a few times. I asked her before saying any of this, I would never want to misstep or misrepresent her in any type of way. But it's definitely something that I know has followed her throughout her life, because she has contemplated and attempted suicide multiple times. So I feel like it's something that doesn't necessarily get talked about a lot. So this episode, I feel like, will bridge that gap between multiple women and multiple people in society's day and age that we are in now, to where they can feel like they can have a conversation, to where they feel like they can at least tell their closest friend or a family member, someone who they can confide in, someone who is close with them. We recently just discovered this amazing app called White Flag, where you can talk about all of your traumas or all of the things you have been through anonymously with other anonymous people, which I feel like is an amazing thing, because yes, it does give you strength to openly do that, but everybody has to go at their own pace. They can't be made to just come out and say their past traumas, right? They have to ease into it, if at all, because I know these things, like my traumas and my mother's traumas, it takes years to even talk about these things, to even say that this has happened to them. So it's definitely something that I feel like I'm thankful for you both coming on the show and talking about it, and y'all creating this short film Shame, so that we can start to have that conversation. We need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, like we said before. So I just wanted to shine a little light on that and bring a little personal aspect so that you guys can get to know us a little bit more, know where we come from, because generational trauma, I know, even though she is a woman and I'm a male and I've never experienced anything like that, but I can feel the pain she went through. I can sense that, because that's my mother. That's the person who I know better than anyone else. So it's definitely something that I will always be a strong advocate for. So I just wanted to thank you both for their time today.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. And
Absolutely.
I'm
And
so sorry that your mom had to deal with that, and that she's okay and she's getting help, it seems like.
Yes.
yeah,
So just first and foremost, just want to say
Well, I want to unpack a little bit about what you said too when you brought up the fact that a lot of times the people that are committing these assaults are beloved people. There's, and I'm not necessarily talking about it on a celebrity level or something like that. Just he's the nicest guy in our family. He's the oh my gosh, he'll do anything. He'll give you the shirt off of his back to help you out, kind of a thing. And I think the shame aspect of it, the retreating, the fear of reporting it, it's all, you don't want to be the person that takes down that great guy. Oh my gosh, I don't want to ruin his life. Maybe, and then the self-blame aspect comes into it. Well, maybe he is really a nice guy. What did I do to cause him to be like that? Why? What did I do wrong? Right? And that's where it really starts to spiral out of control, right? That when you start to blame yourself, this guy can't possibly be this bad person. I must have done something to enrage him or cause him to do this. And that's when, and Logan, speaking, with what you just said about your mom, even if you're not the person that is the victim, you may be a part of the process with the victim, because it leads to so many different aspects. I feel like there's two ways that a victim goes when they've been sexually assaulted. They either become very promiscuous and feel like this is the nature now, I must have brought this on, this must be who I am, this must be it, or they retreat and have a very hard time maintaining sexual relationships and feeling comfortable even with somebody, their spouse that they love very, kind of a thing. And either way, that's not only ridiculously hard for them to process and go through, but also the people that they may be in a relationship with trying to process it, right? Talk about that a little bit, about the reasons of, okay, you're a survivor and now you're starting to have to deal with all this stuff. You're retreating from, and now you're trying to figure it out. Talk about that a little bit from the women aspect of it. Where would you go? I'm guessing is what I'm trying to say. What are your thoughts on women that decide to retreat and basically, like, I can't do any of this, I've got to go inward, I did something wrong and I'm not going to take this person down? Let's talk about that for a little bit.
I can actually talk about this because that's speaking from personal experience. I was extremely sexually harassed and at a place of work, and to the point that I was so uncomfortable going to work. And the weird thing was that I started feeling like I couldn't tell anybody, right? Because I didn't know, one, I didn't know what was happening, and two, I just didn't know like what to say, what would I do? And my supervisor had actually taken it up because I told her in confidence, and she kind of took it on up the channel and escalated it. And I remember coming to her office crying, being like, why did you do that? I don't want people to see me like this. And I don't know what his situation is. What if he has a family? What if he's a single dad? Like, and he needs this job? Like, I'm sitting here feeling bad for the guy that's been making my life miserable for weeks. And I'm so glad that I had the mentor that I did, because I owe her everything, because she point blank was like, this is not on you. You
Yeah.
have not done anything to have caused this. This is his problem, and he needs to be held accountable. And I remember like going through such a weird, complex set of emotions, because I couldn't quite grapple with it. Like, I kept wanting to blame myself, like, what did I do? Like, did I wear something weird like that day? Did I wear, was like, I'm sitting there second guessing every decision I made at work, when I didn't do anything to cause it. So it was, anyways, my point of the story is, I retreated, and it wasn't until she came and talked to me, and it wasn't until the senior leadership came into my office and they were like talking to me about it, that I realized that no, I am not to blame, and I should not be ashamed, because that's what I really felt. Those are the two things that caused me to kind of retreat and not perform as well at work.
Mm, mm. Well, you're transitioning perfectly right into what we were talking about at the top of the show. There are so many mental aspects of it. The anxiety of having to go to work every day and be in this environment. And were you to blame for it? Were you not to blame for it? The depression that sets in, thinking that you can't do anything about it, and being brought to tears. There's so many people don't realize that, like, when we get to the point where it starts to spiral towards even the slightest thought of taking your own life, there are warning signs there. There are things leading up to that. The anxiety, the depression, the disassociation, retreating from people. So often those warning signs are overlooked. They're missed, right? They're just having a bad day. Couldn't be anything, right? And when the shame is part of it, where you don't tell anybody why this is going on, why you're retreating, why you're depressed, why you're anxious to come to work, even worse. Then it is more just shoved under the count. Oh, it's just a bad day. Something must be going on, but and they push it on. So many different mental aspects of what people go through. And I also want to touch on one thing, and then we'll dive into some other stuff. But I think that what your story that you just shared right there made an excellent point. Sexual assault is not always just physical, right? You can verbally sexually assault somebody. You can mentally sexually assault somebody. It doesn't necessarily mean rape. And that's an important aspect to make, because it's whatever is making you feel uncomfortable. That is a problem. And you saying, my legs, did I wear something wrong? Those type things. I think another problem that we have when we talk about sexual assault is that it's sexual. It is not, it's violent, right? Rape is an act of violence, not sex. It has nothing to do with sex. It is a act of violence and control, right? And that's another area where I think that there's a whole misconception to it, that it's somehow sexual in nature and not violence in nature, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I mean, rape is not, yeah, it has nothing to do with sex when you think about it, outside of the actual penetration aspect of it, right?
That's
Because it really is, it's violent, it's brutal, and it's a sign of power play. And that's all it really comes down to. It's somebody wanting to feel in control over someone else to the maximum extent they can have, which is to violate somebody. And that's 100% rape and sexual assault is a complete violation, the worst kind of violation of power.
Mm. Without doubt.
Completely agree. And something else that I feel like would go remiss without saying, a good amount of time that these instances occur, it happens with people
Yes.
I rarely, I don't want to say rarely, but sometimes it doesn't happen with strangers. But yet, if you feel like, you're comfortable with this person and you don't necessarily know where things are going, and then they go too far to enough to where like you feel like you have a good relationship with this person or a good friendship with this person, and you don't want to make them mad because you actually genuinely do care about them. But then you come to find out that this person isn't the person who you thought they were, or you thought that you discovered throughout your time at work, or just throughout life. So that is something that I feel like not a lot of people talk about, because you try to, once you grow into an adult, you try to gain family who is not necessarily blood, right? Your friends become family, people become close to you, your work family, quote unquote. And then to think about how that sexual assault or rape, or how that would change the dynamic of the certain environment that that person or you met that person. So you start to think about all these different aspects rather than the actual assault. You think about how it's going to change, the dynamic at work or however. So that's something that I feel like doesn't really get talked about a lot, how you have to keep your head on a swivel literally 100% of the time, 24 hours a day, which is really unfortunate for a woman. I just feel like, you can't just live your life through a day-to-day basis. You have to feel like, am I presenting myself the right way? Am I talking to this person correctly? That doesn't necessarily come off in a extreme flirty manner, because I don't want to get them the wrong impression. I it's so sad and disheartening that I feel like you feel like you have to go through this. It's unnecessary, and I apologize for my sex, because I mean a good amount of us suck. So I just want to throw that out there as well.
Not everyone, but yeah, I guess there is that. I'd like to say minority of people, but the
Yeah, no.
numbers might not be as to Deidre's point. A lot of assault gets underreported, and a lot of suicide attempts or ideation gets underreported. So
It
um,
it really Logan, I want to touch on that a little bit because I think that's an excellent point. If it happens with somebody that and it's within your group, your circle, that affects everybody. Now you're worried about, oh my gosh, I'm gonna say that this person did this to me. How is that gonna affect my friendship with my other people? How are they gonna look at me differently? Are they gonna look at him differently? What is that gonna do to my social circle? Right? So now you're even more so, do I call this act out, or do I just keep it to myself? And if you decide to do the keeping it to yourself, you hide it, you're shameful about it, that interaction every day, staying in that circle with that person that did that to you, it's got to be just unbelievably pressure filled to try to maintain a circle, knowing that this happened and you're terrified to say it, right? And you don't want to disrupt any of the other people. That's got to be one of the most difficult things to have to put yourself through. I can only imagine, because it is inevitably going to disrupt that group, that environment, right? It has to. There's no other way. People will start to take sides. People will say, and it's one of the things that I think leads to not wanting to come forward and say that it happened, right?
yeah, 100%. And actually, in the short film that I wrote, Shame, the whole my character is sexually assaulted the night before, and we don't, we allude to it a lot. We don't necessarily show that full aspect of it. But that morning after, that she's walking back to her friend and speaking to Deidre's character, um, it's a mutual friend. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not just any mutual friend. It's the one that Deidre's character is in love with. So it's this extra layer of, oh my God, he's in our circle, but he's in our inner circle. And there's this dynamic with my best friend, and how can I tell her that the guy that she's been crushing over for so long is a rapist, right?
Yeah.
And because it just happens, that's the it triggers her all over again, because the idea is that they were ready to go to an event that morning, which was the Renaissance Fair as part of their tradition. And he apparently texts Deidre's character to say that he's coming. And when I find that out, when my character finds that out, it just triggers her all over again, because it just happened the night before, ultimately leading her to take her own life. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell. But it plays on all of that. It plays on the walk of shame that makes women feel like they did something wrong, even if they wanted to consensually have sex with someone. They have every right to want to have sex with somebody, right? But it makes them feel like they did something. Oh, but they get the walk of shame. But then you've got the guys walking in the hallway getting high fives, right? So it's this double standard of, okay, she's a slut now, so it's playing on that walk of shame concept. And in this case, the assault was, the sex was not consensual. It was an actual assault. So it plays on the shame that you have when that happens. And then also the shame that you have now trying to explain to your friend, and that awkward dynamic. So, and the cultural aspect, right, of this happening, like, especially, it's suicide, sexual assault is stigmatized everywhere. It's a universal problem. But I will say that as an Asian, in Asian culture, I think it's even worse. Like, we really don't talk about it. And women are definitely not necessarily seen at the same level. And they're taught, all these, it's like you're assaulted, and the first question that your parents might ask you is like, or why did you go out that night? I told you not to go out that night. You know what I mean? And it's like they start attacking you. And so it's also that a helplessness, which, again, compounds that shame. And then in this course of a few hours, that's all it takes for her to decide to try to, take her own life.
Well, there's 2 points there that I want to address, because at the top of the interview, you kind of discussed how film and television and the media kind of like are they definitely foster a certain expectation of what women are or are supposed to be, right? They put that out
Right.
there. And then on our last episode, I had a conversation with 4 unbelievably just great Asian women, and we talked about that, the cultural aspect of, especially in the Asian culture, about the chain, the hierarchy, and what's expected of women. And that is heavily portrayed in film and television, that Asian women they're supposed to be home, and they're submissive, and they're this, right? So even more so, I can see where a sexual assault or something like that would be kind of on the down low in that culture, because it's like, oh, we don't want to talk about that because that's your role anyway. You should have just submitted anyway, kind of a thing, right? And so I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like that is an integral part to it. And different aspect of it. And the other thing too, go back to, is the power. When you said that he texts to let her know he's coming, that's a power move. Oh, I know I did this, and I know she likes me, so haha, let me go, because he wants to be in control. He wants to make the situation uncomfortable, right? And he knows that text will do that, which is just. But it goes back to, it has nothing to do with intimacy or sex. It's control, and it's violent, and that's how it is. I'm so happy that you guys are making the film to talk about it, because Logan and I also made a film about suicide, because we believe wholeheartedly that the best way to make people comfortable talking about uncomfortable situations is through art. Because nobody just sits down in the living room and says, let's talk about sex and assault and rape. Let's talk about Jenny who killed herself last week. That it just doesn't happen, right? You don't do it. But if you just watched a movie and it's like, oh my gosh, and it starts a conversation like, oh, I can't believe that happened, kind of thing, and it gets that conversation rolling, right? that's the way to start these conversations. And it's so critical that we use these type platforms to start those conversations. So huge kudos to you guys for doing that. We know the process of trying to do a film like this. I don't know if you guys experienced it, but we experienced a lot of backlash when we initially came out. When we were trying to get funding, we received some really nasty emails from potential crew and funding people when they found out what the story was about. And they were like, yeah, you have some liberal agenda and blah, blah, kind of so it's a difficult process to sometimes get your message out with these type movies. So we commend you for being brave enough and committed enough to put that out there. I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. But I do want to ask, what drew you to this film? Because it is very, heavy. And a lot of people, it's hard to deal with heavy context. So what drew you to this film to tell this story?
Well, I've been wanting to work with Ashna for a while now. I just love her energy in general. So I was pretty stoked when we talked about what project we wanted to work on. And I told her that I wanted to do something dramatic, as in like something drama based, not mellow. And she came up with this idea, and it really like stuck out to me because of having all of these experiences and knowing so many people who have been assaulted or have contemplated suicide. And I just think that those are very important topics, having like my own experiences with the latter and knowing so many people who had experiences with both and or I just think that this is a very important topic for everybody as a whole, but also specifically for veterans, people who are a part of indigenous tribes in Alaska. That is actually the highest ratio of people who commit suicide. I don't know if you've seen our Instagram. People want to check it out. Shame the short film. We have all these statistics of like specific like ethnocentric groups that are higher in considering or having committed suicide. And I just think that these are very important topics, like you said, that aren't talked about because, I mean, who wants to like figuratively like rip the heart open and throw a bunch of salt in that wound,
So Ashna, talk a little bit about why you wanted to write this film and the process of, was it difficult? Were you able to just jump right into it? Or what is the backstory a little bit about that?
So I started writing about it because I'm unfortunately have dealt a lot with sexual assault and mental health in my own life. But I remember when I was initially writing it and I finished it and we were ready to do the pitch video for a crowdfunding, and I held back, not knowingly, like I didn't do it on purpose, but I talked about the people in my life that died of suicide, but I didn't mention that I thought about it too. It was only after we went live that I realized like I should have said that, but the whole reason that I didn't say it was because of the shame that I was feeling. And that's something that I am going to eradicate from my vocabulary. And that's why I'm doing this. And that's why this film is so much more meaningful. I can't expect others to get rid of shame if the actual creator of it still has it. So this is my way of showing that.
Right. And I'm not sure how much of a time span happens in your film. Like, do we see the downward spiral to the eventual suicide, or is it just kind of a quick spiral boom? But I feel like, and I kind of touched on it a little bit at the top, but with the warning signs, right? I feel so many times that there are signs that are missed, that, that people are, if we just paid more attention, if we just went out of our way to check on some people sometimes, right? If you notice that your friend is having a bad day, ask why. Call, hey, how are you today? I kind of noticed you didn't seem yourself, kind of. And so often we're so busy with our own lives that we tend to forget, right? And Logan and I have both talked about this on previous shows, but we have both thought about taking our lives. We've both been in those situations where we've had something happen to where we've contemplated suicide. And thankfully, there was somebody there, somebody to say, hey, wait a minute, are you okay? What's going on? We're here for you. We can help you, kind of a thing. But so often that is not the case. And I feel like we need to do a better job of looking for the warning signs, educating people on the warning signs that this is not right. When you see this happen, a quick withdrawal, a change in appearance, somebody that's normally vocally smiling and happy, not talkative anymore. The little subtle things that you should be noticing that we're missing. And I think that goes a lot to the education and the awareness and putting it out there. And films like this do that. They get it out there. They start people talking. And then, like you said, with your social media, you start to lay out facts and you start to put out things. And so it's so crucial for people to help people. I don't think it's a simple hello, how you doing today could save somebody's life. Literally save somebody's life. The difference between them taking their life that afternoon or seeing that somebody sees them, somebody recognizes them. It's so important, right? Sometimes it's just that I need somebody to hear me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. I was a peer counselor in college, and so one of the things is we had to be trained by a licensed psychiatrist and everything in order to like make sure that we can understand and see the signs and be there. And then if it's, if we feel like it's going to lead to potentially suicide or something more serious, then we obviously need to escalate it. And a lot of it was just sometimes people would call because they just wanted someone to listen,
right?
Without judgment, without any sort of, even sometimes without advice. Sometimes people they don't want to hear people giving them advice. They just want they just want to feel like they've been heard, right? That somebody is listening to them and actually hearing what they have to say. And so, yeah, I think there's a reason why people always say, go see help, go talk to a therapist, because they're that safe space, right? Now they're taught to create that safe space, but that doesn't always have to be. Like in my case, luckily my mother was there for me when I had thoughts of suicide, and she spotted the signs and she knew that. And I'm really blessed that she was knowledgeable to know that, because if she hadn't, I might not be here today, right?
That's right.
So it's very true. Like you really, I think that's something that I wish and I hope that maybe in schools or something, they'll start, like maybe later on, maybe obviously not, younger kids, but especially in high school or middle school, to start kind of training people to acknowledge, like, to understand what empathy is, to understand kind of the cues that people might have if they're not feeling well or if something happened to them, because it could save you if the right person just catches you, before it's too late.
Absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm glad you brought up the school aspect and specifically high school, because in my specific high school, that's kind of how we dealt with things. If it was just too much, I've had on more than one handful of friends who have committed suicide, and it was just kind of like a normal thing. It's just like, this is what you do when you feel like there's nothing else to do. If you don't feel like you have anybody you can talk to, if you feel like you can't put up that facade anymore or wear that mask. So it became so normal in my everyday life that, when I was having these thoughts, I was just like, I'm going out with the rest of them. But then while talking to therapists and while seeking help, I had to retrain my brain on, this is not a normal thing. This is not a normal way of thinking. So we have to figure out a way to navigate inside of my own head, how to reverse that thinking and how to change that when I ever get down. And I'm thankful now that, even when those thoughts cross my head, they're in and out so quickly, because immediately, as soon as I think about, or as soon as I think about these things, the people I think about and who it could affect throughout their lifetime, and how it could be a domino effect like it was for me, we just need to stop that domino and keep standing tall. So I think, that's the biggest thing, because I feel like people fall so deep into the trap of it feeling normal, or them feeling like this is your way out, when, you can't get to that point, because there's so many people who know you and love you, even if you haven't talked to them in weeks, months, years. If they see that, and if they know that that happened to you, they're going to start to feel bad about themselves. And then that leads into the domino effect.
And school, high school, Logan, great point, because that is like, it's amazing how quickly in middle school and high school we can whip out the video of the banana and how to put on a condom, but we won't whip out a video talking about the warning signs of mental health and problems and things to look for, right? Everybody gets the cute little giggle out of watching them explain how a baby is made, or kind of that, but we should be having other conversations aside from that. And the idea that there's still this stigma attached to mental health and suicide and these subjects, we've got to help eliminate that stigma. And by putting films like yours and ours into these schools and showing them and starting conversations and getting rid of that stigma, I think that's the way we start to do that. And Deidra, did you say that you had once contemplated also, or had thought about it in your life as well?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of a recurring thing within my like inner circle.
Yeah.
And I keep saying actually, two of my closest friends, I kind of like put my gratitude towards them for keeping me alive. I don't talk to one anymore, but Kelsey and Bailey, like them in particular, one of them and myself, like dealt with it via self-injury, and I still have scars from that. And I know it's like something that is sometimes made fun of, but honestly, like during the time, obviously I'm not recommending this. It helped me out. There was a lot of stuff going on. Even like teachers in high school were like very condescending, to put it lightly,
Yeah.
towards people who dressed differently and the like. I was like very Christian, but also very goth. still still am somewhat of both, but like comments were made. I decorated my locker accordingly based on those adjectives, and like stuff was torn down like the next day. I don't know who did it still. And but like even derogative comments were made by like teachers, people within my circle. And there was just a lot going on. Like, I don't want to go into details, but it was overwhelming. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I felt like nobody was there outside of those two friends. I mean, I had other friends. Those were like my main two, like, I guess, like heart guardians for lack of
Yeah.
for lack of words. Yeah. Yeah, that lasted for a long time. I actually like ended up getting a tattoo on the wrist, like, that would have been the one to lead the way out, to like remind myself that there are other options. Like, this is supposed to be like relating to like the crown of thorns, and then like a rose, like a white rose, to remind me to like keep my heart pure and like not let the world make me bitter. And then there's blood. I'm sure you figured out that reference based on what I just said.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important for people to like get to see this film, because there are other options. There's no shame in considering, but like I feel like there's so much in this film that Ashna wrote for you to see, that if you just check out our Instagram, Shame the Short Film, or like check out our Indiegogo, where each of us in the main crew like tells our story, like you'll get to know a lot more and you won't feel so alone. Like another organization to check out would be To Write Love on Her Arms. It's a really important one that I support. They also have a whole bunch of things that I think like anybody dealing with these kind of issues would get a lot of help from.
Well,
Yeah, most definitely. We'll definitely direct everybody towards that way. But I also just wanted to say I'm thankful that I'm having this conversation with you, because the more conversations we have, the more enlightened we are, and the more strong we are, the more ability we are to continue moving forward and recognize other people. Because I always say, because some of my best friends are people who have also been through traumatic events, and I always say pain recognizes pain,
right.
and those are the people you can really talk to in some sort of fucked up way. But it's always, it's good to have that relatability, even when, things are varied in certain situations. But yeah, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for just being a part of it today, because it is an important conversation, and I am super excited for Shame to come out. I know it's hitting the festival circuit and gonna do amazing things. I have high hopes for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to say that the reason I asked you that is because so often we hear, well, that'll never happen to me. I've never heard of anybody doing that. I don't know anybody, and you kind of like, but guys, this is four random people that at some point did not know each other. And we have all contemplated suicide. We have all been through a traumatic event. That's four random people who are now having a conversation, who thought about it, who had something happen to them. So this idea that you say, well, I don't know anybody. I don't know, not this could never happen to me. This could never kind of a thing. I bet you do know somebody and you're just not aware. And even more so to start those conversations, right? If we can have a conversation with four people and all four of us have had it happen or have thought about it, that should tell you right there that it's far more common than people want to acknowledge. And we really need to get that message out there that this is something that's happening a lot on a regular basis, and we need to be aware of it, and we need to be working towards stopping that and helping and letting people know they're not alone, so that we don't have that stigma of, I don't know anybody that's gone through that. That could never happen to me, because I feel like we get ourselves in trouble when we talk that way. And it's just so critically important that we have these conversations. So I echo what Logan said. Thank you both for sharing your stories and for just getting it out for the world. I mean, you guys are both amazing women. And I do want to say one thing, because I think this is extremely important. By having this conversation, and we just happen to be talking about a women-led project and women sharing their experiences and different things, but there are male victims as well. There are men rape victims who deal with these same issues, who have gone through this same trauma, and who I'm sure have taken their lives. So we don't want to marginalize the fact that it's only women and that it's or only men committing these crimes. That is not the case. So we want to just make that clear that we are not trying to state that message. Not every man is a rapist, nor is every woman a victim. We just want to put that out there. It goes both ways. That said, like Logan said, I mean, it's much more difficult to be a woman in this world still, and to ignore that fact would be ignorant. You guys go through things on a daily basis that we never experience. And it's not right. Like when two guys walk up and hug each other, bro, man, how are you? Okay. Or two women do that, right? But if a woman goes and hugs her friend like that, you got to be careful. Does she like me? Man, that hug she gave me was kind of like, it's ridiculous, right? You hug that person the same way you hugged your female friend, but you hug that male. Little things like that, right? You shouldn't even have to have that thought. You shouldn't be worried about expressing your emotion to somebody because they might get the wrong idea, right? I mean, it's just little things like that. So, you guys are amazing. And we thank you for coming on and talking about this. And, so You mentioned Indiegogo. We want to really plug this away. The campaign is still going on. People can still help donate to get this film made and get the message out there. Tell everybody where they can do that.
Sure. We can send you the link so that way you can post it, but the short link is igg.me/@/shame the short film.
Fantastic.
But it's, we've been fortunate so far that we've been live for about 2 weeks and we've been 42% funded. So we've had a lot of great support, and our friends and family have really come in to help us. And we've also had strangers come and help too, just because they felt like the cause really resonated with them or resonated with their own life story. So we've been hearing that more and more, which is also speaks to the prevalence of suicide and sexual assault, because people are coming out of the woodwork and saying, "Oh my God, this happened to me," or I thought of killing myself. And so it's both scary, but also a sign that we're doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
And by moving forward with this film, but we need all the help we can get. So if you don't mind, even, whatever amount you can contribute helps us, because it does eventually add up. And we are sponsored by a nonprofit from the Heart Productions, so all contributions are tax deductible. So that's also
even better, more amazing.
benefit.
Yeah. Well, if you're willing to share, what's the dollar amount? How short are you guys? What do you need?
So we need 15,000 to get through the shoot,
Okay.
and we are at about 6,200.
So yes,
we have about halfway to go.
That is not, listen, guys, that is not a lot of money. That is not a lot of money. Anybody who's ever done film production knows that is a really small budget, and every dime is necessary. And this is tax deductible. And what a message and a cause to put your money behind to help get that message out there. We are going to do our very best, we promise you, to help you raise the rest of that money. We are going to get the message out there. We understand the importance of it. We crowdfunded our own film. As I said, we know the process. We were very fortunate enough to have people help us out and get ours made, and we are going to do our very best to help you reach that goal and maybe go over that goal and get this message out there, because you guys are wonderful, and it's a great cause. It's a great film, and you guys deserve nothing but the best. So
thank you so much for having us here and having the important conversation and the bravery that it takes to bring all these topics up, because it's not easy.
It's not.
And also for helping us, with our film and supporting our film.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And one more time, what is that Instagram page so we can plug that again, so and drive everybody there?
Deidra, you want to take that one?
Shame the short film. Also on Facebook, but please, Instagram, Shame the short film.
I will say Deidra has been a master at dropping the social throughout the entire interview. She has been fantastic. This is a woman who understands crowdfunding and how to push it. Absolutely.
I learned everything from Ashna and Kelly. Every time I saw Ashna's face, I was like, remember.
Well, thank you guys.
No. Remember at the time.
Well, listen, thank you guys so much. This has been amazing. And thank you. You said the keyword bravery. Logan and I talk about all the time about how this podcast is like the best free therapy session to just get it out there, talk about things that have happened to us, and let everybody know that you're not alone, and we're all kind of going through it the best we can, and that everything is okay. You're going to make it through. You're going to get there. We've got people there to help you. And so bravery, a key word there. Thank you guys for coming on and being brave enough to not only share your own stories, but to put this message out there and be brave enough to send it to the world, regardless of what people say or not say about it. It takes a lot of bravery to do that too. So thank you. And you guys are amazing.
Ooh, boy. Yeah. I mean, just the connectivity, to all of these different walks of life. I really like what you brought up about, 4 random people. This is just 4 random people that could be met off the street. And now we're having this conversation about such a deep and dark, sensitive conflicted topic. So yeah, I think it was a very special conversation.
I agree. And you're right. Just think about that. Just step outside your door and take a walk and you come across 10, 15, 20 people. If 4 out of every 10 have thought about committing suicide. I mean, think about like it's so, I think it's so much more prevalent than people realize, and to have these conversations. And same thing with sexual assault. Every day it's happening in society, every day. And I think I would guarantee that more often or not, you probably know somebody that's been through it and hasn't discussed it or brought it up. And yeah, it's just, whew, what a deep conversation. But I love having these conversations. And I just want to thank you, because this was an idea spawned from you. And to have this podcast and to have these conversations. And for anybody who doesn't know, who might not have listened to any of the previous episodes, you know, it's not always easy to do. I was for as vocal and out there as I am, if you guys follow the other podcast, I'm a very introverted, private person. So to have these conversations is difficult. And to come up with this idea and say we should be doing this, it has been such a huge help to me. And I know has begun to really start to help others through our platform. So thank you for being brave enough to say, hey, I've got an idea. You know, I really appreciate that. And I just wanted our listeners to know where this comes from and how it started, because yeah, it's important. It's important.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to have it just be a natural, free-flowing conversation, you know, to help people start to build that bridge to have that conversation. It is it's nice. It's a very enlightening thing, because we get to learn so much about different people and the way they tick, and it helps us just in our everyday lives because we can identify things better. It's a very special thing, and we have to thank all of our listeners who have been listening to it since the beginning, and all of our new listeners. We got to thank you so freaking much. And yeah, it's an amazing thing, and I just hope everybody remembers that everything is okay.